Reports with black, and they are off, and we have the first move. It is the queen's pawn 2 squares forward. How is Richard going to handle this?
Wow, very exciting opening on the board. This is called the King's Indian Defense. The setup that Richard is playing has been favored by such great players as Bobby Fischer, ex-world champion, Garry Kasparov, one of the greatest players of all time, and they're into what is quite a main line here, with Nodirbek having the big center, but Richard playing against that center.
Yeah, and there we see Nodirbek retreating the dark squared bishop. It was under fire, it's gone to support the center, and now Richard has a choice. He can step forward with his knight, attack the bishop, or he can try to just develop his pieces and put pressure on the center. No, he steps forward with the knight, attacking the bishop. And there we see Richard retreat the knight, and potentially we could see a 3-fold repetition. If the position is repeated 3 times, then the game is declared a draw.
Yeah, it's a bit peculiar play by Nodirbek, actually. This bishop idea, he's moved his bishop out, he's moved it back, and he's moved it back again. It's like that bishop that Nodirbek is moving is a little bit drunk there. It's not really sure where it's going to go, and it goes all the way home. And we see an exchange in the center. Now, this exchange is supposed to be okay for black. It's supposed to lead to a fairly even position, but we're going to have to see what Nodirbek has up his sleeve here. The more simplifications you get in chess, the more high the likelihood of a draw is. And actually, positionally here, Jovanka, black could even be better because black has control of a central square in the future, but white doesn't. And that is right on that open line in the middle of the board, which is going to be a key factor of this position.
Yeah, and just talking there about the position, take a look on the right. There's an evaluation bar which tells us what the computer's assessment of the position is. The more it swings in one side's favor, the more that favor that advantage has. And there we also take a look at the heart rates, and we can already see that Richard is in the red. His heart rate's 148.
Yeah, that is quite a high heart rate there. Obviously feeling the pressure, and he's now got to find a way to deal with this knight jump. He just retreats his knight. This is very interesting. He's keeping pieces on the board, and this is typical Richard. He wants a dynamic fight. He doesn't like exchanging unless he has to. He wants to keep the position as interesting as possible, and that knight in the middle will probably be kicked away now by this move. That pawn is giving it a little kick in the shin. The knight has to retreat, and Richard just moving his queen to a better square there. And one important plan is Richard's knight on the left-hand side at some point will start moving towards the center, and if that happens, Richard could get the advantage here.
Yeah, and but for, you know, there are 2 players playing the game, and for Abdusattorov, it's going to be all about the center. It's all going to be about the left side of the board. He wants to put his rooks on the open line. Rooks belong on open lines, remember that tip. And then there he will push back the black knight if it steps forward. And there we see Richard maneuvering the knight and trying to put it on the e6 square.
Yeah, both players' heart rates in the red. Richard 153. They do say that playing a long game of tense chess loses a lot of calories for you, and this has been my tactic of exercising throughout my life. Rather than going for a jog, I sit down and play a game of chess, maybe with a whiskey. Great way to lose weight. And the knight now comes into the middle, and this is the standard plan here. Richard is now threatening to win the pawn, so Nodirbek defends that pawn with another pawn, and Richard now opening up the queen side. But this is a very risky move, Jovanka, that one. Maybe white could push the pawn again, and he does.
And he does, and he goes for it. I mean, it was very tempting to make this move. After all, if there is a trade of pawns, then white's c-pawn can step 1 square further and attack the knight. And it's not just that. Also, the knight on c3 can spring forward to the d5 square in the center and attack the black queen. Ooh, Richard's position is looking shaky.
Both players now keep an eye on the clock. They've spent over half their time, and Richard is getting to that critical moment where he could be under a minute. and he just develops his bishop. I like this move. You've got to get all your pieces working, and this is trying to indirectly control some central squares, but I love what Nodirbek's done here. This is typical play from a young player. He loves playing aggressively. Let's remember, he was one of the youngest ever World Blitz champions, rapid champions, so he's an incredibly talented player. Lots of exchanges there, Jovanka.
Lots of exchanges, but still, you know, there's so much dynamism in the position. It's open. Everything will be decided on a move-by-move basis, and look at that. Nodirbek comes in, offers a trade of light square bishop, and he does that in order just to reinforce the control on that d5 square in the middle.
Yeah, this is a good positional move, and Richard exchanges that one off, and now the white knight kind of goes the wrong way. I do feel here that black should be okay. The evaluation bar, though, you can see it more in white's favor. I think black should be okay because it's a symmetrical pawn structure. That means there's less unbalance in the position, and can Richard now use one of those knights to better effect? Maybe throw one in to attack the queen. White still has a little bit of pressure here, though, it seems.
I think white has definitely what we call a niggle, right? You can imagine that pawn on the left.
Or a nibble.
A nibble.
A nibble, yes.
Oh, niggle. I always say niggle.
I always say nibble, like a little nibble, like a little rabbit nibbling away at his carrot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
semantics. Anyhow, what I wanted to say was that white has that possibility of pushing that one pawn there on the left side of the board up the board and starts annoying the black knights.
And yes, white's queen is a lot more active, but also the time. Richard now going under 30 seconds. His heart rate, 161 there. And we can see the knight moves to the side of the board, offering an exchange of queens. Nodirbek has to do something about this queen exchange. Will he move the queen? Will he defend his queen? Or will he exchange queens here?
And he goes for the exchange and then initiates another set of exchange. Now the rooks have left the board. Rook takes rook, played by Nodirbek. And there we see Richard, just 22 seconds left on the clock. And still, white has uncomfortable pressure there on the left side of the board.
And we are now into the last part of the game, the ending, as the queens are off and they're running out of pieces. It looks to me like white still has that pressure. That last move attacks some of Richard's pawns on the king side. And how is Richard going to deal with this? He might lose a pawn here or get an uncomfortable situation. And Richard pawn structure, those double pawns in the middle, they look pretty ugly to me, Jovanka.
I know, and the great Beth Harmon herself said it. She does not like double pawns. And Richard, with only 8 seconds on the clock, he has a difficult position. And here is where the young Uzbek player is in his element. He is a universal player. He loves to massage those positional advantages. And look at that, a pawn has dropped from the board for Richard.
Oh,
maybe a second one.
There's a big check. Oh, my words. The knight jumps in. Is it going to be a queen's pawn? Is it going to be a king's pawn? Something else here. I reckon the queen's pawn. And he's going for the king's pawn as soon as I said that.
Yeah, and well, Abdusattorov, he is playing fighting chess because he responds with an opening called the Sicilian, and it is the accelerated dragon on the board. And Richard playing crafty stuff because he's not actually pushing the queen's pawn 2 squares forward, and in fact he's delaying that.
Yeah, quite a calm start by Richard here, avoiding a lot of the sort of more well-analysed positions you get and trying to go his own way. And this is typical Richard, trying to sort of muddy the waters and not rely on memory. Just saying to his young opponent, let's play a game of chess. Let's not rely on what you've learnt through books. We're going to go our own path and, see how it goes. And, well, Nodirbek is developing his pieces very sensibly here, putting pressure on white's pawn in the middle.
Yeah, and Richard is playing the slow game. He is developing his pieces. He's getting ready to put that knight towards the center, and he will be breaking in the center when the time is right. And there I can already see that Richard's heart rate is probably one of the lowest we've seen it so far, but still pretty high at 134.
It's a little bit high there. And with the last move, I like this last move by Nodirbek because he's preparing to advance on the queen side and gain space. And chess, again, you've got to think of those analogies to do with war because that's apparently what it's based on. and it's about gaining space. The more space you gain, and Richard there gains space in the center, the easier your position is to play. You have more options with more space.
And big threat on the board from Richard. He is threatening to push his pawn in the center, the d pawn, 1 square forward, attack the bishop. So that's why Nodirbek responds very aggressively, but it does concede the square for a knight to jump to.
Yeah, and there is maybe a little tactic that Richard's thinking about here. If he moves his knight forwards, black might be able to capture something in the center. So a capture here first. Where's his knight going to go? And that's why he goes backwards. But you don't really want to retreat your knights or any piece, because you're putting them back in the starting blocks where they can't have any effect on the battle. And this is not ideal. On the plus side, he has the big center. So the center looks nice. I know you like playing with big center.
I love the center, Simon. It's my favorite thing in chess. And, well, the question is one of timing for Nodirbek. He has the advantage. He's got the lead in development, but he has to do something quickly. Otherwise, Richard will simply develop the dark squared bishop, and he will have that massive pawn center in the middle. And there you can see Richard, he's trying to maneuver his way out of dodge.
Yeah, but black also has that space on the queen side. Black has a very solid position, and with that last move, Nodirbek is opening up his rook on the open file. He brings his queen into the game. It still seems very even, this position at the moment. Will Richard now do the move you recommended, move the bishop to line up against the queen? I think that'd be a good move, get all your pieces in. Oh, he plays a very calm move there.
Yeah, I think he's preparing it.
Yeah, stopping a knight jumping in there.
Exactly. And now it's going to come out. There you go. And now the dark square bishop is eyeing up the queen. And Nodirbek has a choice. He can either ignore it completely and just continue with the plan of lining up the rooks on the open line. And he does. Or I was going to say he can move the queen out of the way. And, well, look at the way that Richard has maneuvered the pieces. Suddenly his light square bishop wasn't on a good square, but now it's on a great square. But the question is, can Nodirbek actually grab a pawn in the middle of the board? Would you touch it?
Well, there's a tactical idea that Richard has. If black's knight captures that pawn in the middle, because one way to work out if you can win a pawn is how many pieces you have attacking that pawn, how many pieces you have defending. But he couldn't tactically, it didn't quite work there. And both players moving with their queens now. Nodirbek trying to block up that very strong bishop of Richard's by putting a pawn in the way, taking the range away. It's like building a brick wall in front of an archer, so the archer can't, well, unless he can get it over the brick wall, a very high brick wall, like 400 meters high. That's what he's doing there.
Yeah, and the big problem actually for white is how on earth is the queen gonna mobilize herself? I mean, the rook is, and putting the queen in the corner doesn't make a good impression there.
Yeah, it's kind of a wait and see position at the moment. Both sides have a good structure, and they're kind of waiting for their opponent to make the first committal move here, because it might weaken the position if you do something committal. So they're trying to play as many useful moves that improve the position as they can. And that bishop has gone backwards and forwards the whole time. It
was attacked, and there we see Nodirbek also putting his queen in the corner, just piling on the pressure and that pawn on the middle. And Nodirbek's pieces are harmonizing really nicely. The rooks are doubled up, and Richard, well, at least he has more time on the clock. But it's very difficult for both sides to come up with a concrete plan of improvement now.
It is. It's a bit of, again, wait and see, but the time could be very important here. And Nodirbek has half the time of Richard. He makes the first move, and the evaluation bar does not like this. The evaluation bar is saying Richard now has a great position, and that was the problem. You have to sometimes be incredibly patient in chess, and I think Nodirbek was not patient enough there. Richard throws his knight towards black's king, and there's a big attack brewing around the black king there. And will that black king be able to defend itself? I'm not sure it will.
Well, Nodirbek only has 24 seconds in order to orchestrate a defense. And there we see Richard just calmly improving the placement of the dark square bishop. And, well, offering a trade. Is Richard going to go for it? Yes, he does. Ooh.
And he goes for a trade, and this position really heating up. And another white knight. Look at those white knights. They're dancing quite elegantly
but look at
around
this.
The board. And the knight is trapped
in the middle of the board.
Ooh. the black knight. You can see the look on Nodirbek's face there. He can't believe that his knight in such a seemingly good square has nowhere to go. The white pawn is ready to take that knight, and the knight has nowhere safe.
And he only has 10 seconds. Oh, are we going to see Armageddon? And there, Richard goes up material, and now another knight just springs to life there on the right side of the board.
The only problem white has is the queen. Richard's queen is trapped in the corner, and it's going to be quite hard to get that queen out. But if he can find a way to mobilize his queen, then he's going to be doing all right. So black actually has a bit of compensation here, and practically it's not that easy to play. But look at the clock there. Richard, 1 minute, 5 seconds. Nodirbek, 4 seconds. The knight comes in with a check. The other knight comes in. They're dancing the dance of death there. But can Richard open the position up anymore?
Yeah, he will need to activate the queen. You nailed it there, Simon. And that is the big problem for Richard. Yes, he is material up, but what will he do? Will he try to initiate a set of trades? Well, no, he's making room for the queen. And now the queen is going to be heading to the right side of the board. What is happening? This position is going crazy. I mean, are we going to see queen takes rook? Yes, we are.
And Nodirbek is trying to complicate it. He has the queen, but Richard has the 2 rooks, and 2 rooks are generally stronger than the queen. And also, there's the extra knight, and that knight takes a pawn with check. The black king is living very dangerously here, and Richard should really win this game now, taking it to our first Armageddon, unless he makes a mistake. It's still possible to make a mistake. He wants to get those rooks in the game. Look at that. Lifting it into the position there.
It's going to be a checkmating attack. And look at that king right on the edge. And there you see Nodirbek is suffering there.
He is, and this must be checkmate very soon. He just needs to get his other rook across. Is he going to do that? He's going to do it with a check. And I think there's going to be checkmate. Oh, beautiful move there. White has to win. So if it's a draw, Richard goes through. So Richard has the black pieces, and we have another King's Indian defense here.
Yeah, and we do see Nodirbek actually shake things up. He's chosen a different system. It's a very solid system. And Richard now offering Nodirbek a choice. Will he step forward in the middle of the board? Will he trade pawns? Well, he goes for the trade of pawns. And take a look at Richard's clock. That is going to be a pressing factor in this particular game, because he does have that 1 minute deficit.
Yes, he does. And Nodirbek actually going for a very calm opening system here. He's basically saying, I'm not going to take too many risks. I'm going to try to make this a long game where I'm going to slowly grind you down, Richard. And I like what Richard's done. He's made the position, the pawn structure equal, symmetrical. That gives you more drawing chances in the position, and it looks very even, this position, to me at the moment.
Yes, but one of the key things when it comes to Armageddon is that there are 2 strategies to play with the white pieces. You can either go for a quick attack, or you can go for the long game, as you've highlighted there, Simon. And the whole point is that you will simply win on time if you play the long game, because there you see Nodirbek just retreating the bishop. If you can keep the pieces on the board, if you can not allow simplifications, then Nodirbek will win on time.
And the heart rates again, Richard obviously feeling the pressure here. His heart rate is up to 150 at the moment, and that is a high heart rate. And with the last move, Richard's ready to get his queen into the corner, I think, which might look a little bit odd. First of all, his knight is attacked, so he has to move it. He moves it into the center of the board, maybe offering some exchanges there. And we see more exchanges. They should favor Richard, because again, you're getting nearer to that really important draw. A draw, black goes through. So how is Nodirbek going to complicate this position?
Also, he has to stay ahead on the time as well. And there we see Nodirbek lifting the queen and Richard trading off the rooks. And now Richard simply retreats the knight. White still has some small pressure there on the left side of the board. But Richard should not be in trouble. It will come down all the time to the clock.
Yeah, and I don't think Nodirbek seems that comfortable with this position. I mean, he did pick this, you know, when you pick the opening, you kind of know where the game's going to go. With the white pieces, you can kind of dictate the pace of the game, but I'm not that impressed with what he chose here.
Well, also bearing in mind, look at the clock times. Richard has 3 minutes and 7. Nodirbek only has 3 minutes and 9 seconds. There is no time advantage anymore.
And now Richard getting ready to use his rook as well. He wants to swap off the rooks on the next move. White's rook is on that open line, and Richard could try swapping him off. But first of all, he does have a pawn which is under attack here, and that is one weakness that Richard's has a bit of a problem to deal with. That pawn on the left-hand side, which the white queen and the white bishop next to white's king are attacking here.
Yeah, and that is why Richard decided just to protect that pawn just in case of any nasties there. And Nodirbek making a small developing move just to give the king some air, and well, Richard breaking out there on the left side of the board, and Nodirbek grabbing the space.
Yeah, but Richard able to exchange off the rooks here. This is his idea all along. Just get as many pieces off the board as you can. You're getting nearer to king versus king. So Nodirbek says, no, I'm going to keep the rooks on the board, meaning Richard takes over the open file. And now he can probably get the queens off quite shortly. But he's just playing a very useful move first. But is this a bit of a mistake here? I don't see any obvious reason why.
Yeah, I don't see any obvious reason why either, and I think it's a very nice, useful move. He's getting ready just to give the king some space to move to.
And he now comes in, that knight. I love that move. That black knight is going to find a better square. It wants to move over to attack white's queen on its next move. And, oh, what is this move? The evaluation bar hates it. Is this a bad move here? The knight jumps in. What is this move?
What is it?
The evaluation bar says that Richard is now winning.
But he can
you just take the knight?
You can just take the knight.
Is it a bluff? Is he bluffing?
Completely bluffing. I mean, you can just take the knight, and once the queen gives a check, you can step forward with the king.
But maybe the rook then comes down. We're going to see. Is Nodirbek bluffing with this move, or is it a piece of genius? The black king steps over, but Richard is now a piece up. This is the move that looks scary, but there's knight c5. What a brilliant, brilliant move that was. Attacking the queen, attacking the rook. This is a killer move from Richard.
Yeah, and suddenly you can see that there were 3 pieces from Nodirbek that were loose, and this is the problem. The bishop was loose there on the b2 square, and now Richard is a piece up. Once again, we've seen this before.
Wow. I mean, look at his heart rate as well. If it goes any higher, we need to call an ambulance. I'm not sure what the emergency number is here in Germany, but we'll have to find out shortly. He's doing very well here, though, with that extra piece. He's moving his king over to get to the queen side. I mean, there's still some chances of Nodirbek, because even though he's a piece down, he has a passed pawn. That means a pawn which is very close to queening. If you get a pawn to the other end of the board, it comes a queen on the left-hand side there. And that's a bit of a danger still. So it's not completely over yet.
It is not over.
Well.
And also, when you look at the time, of course, there is going to be some pressure there. And Richard is just looking at ways that he can keep control on this position, because he also has to think about white maybe maximizing that rook there on the 6th line and pushing forward with a pawn there on the right. And he's pushed his b-pawn all the way to the 7th square. That is 1 square away from queening.
The other problem Richard has here to convert this is he only has about a minute left, and he's not getting any extra time. I think he's defending and playing this position brilliantly at the moment, because he's managed to neutralize that strong pawn of white's. White now putting black in check there, but he's got to play quickly. He's got 55 seconds left. That's not a lot of time.
It is not a lot of
what's happening here? Oh, I think he's won his piece back. Oh my words, Nodirbek has won the piece back. Any result now possible. He's won that back. It should still probably be a draw, which means that Richard would progress, but it's getting better for white. Every move it seems to be getting better.
Yeah, and let's not forget that Armageddon is all about the clock, the 17th piece on the board, and Richard just has 42 seconds left on the clock. And he does have 1 big asset, and that is that passed pawn there on the right side. It's moving up the board, but can he hold this position with so little time?
Well, this is the problem. You've got to keep an eye on the clock. I think it's going to come down to who loses on time. Richard attacking that bishop. No, you can't do that. You've got to play quickly. He hesitated there, and hesitation is going to lose you the game. He's got 30 seconds. He's got to play quicker, Richard, at the moment. This is a bit too slow. I think he's picking up the pace a bit here, Jovanka, but I really don't know which ways this is going to go now.
No, this is anyone's game, and we can just see Richard hesitating there in this time scramble, and Nodirbek playing quickly, setting some traps.
And they are both playing as quickly as they can, but now Richard's king is also in a little bit of trouble. This should be okay for Richard on the board, but he's got 16 seconds left. This is not enough time. He's going to lose on time, Richard. 12 seconds, 11
10
seconds.
seconds.
You've got to move, Richard. You've got to move, and he's not moving in time. He's just playing too slowly, and the time is going to get to 0, and he's going to lose on the clock here.
He's going to lose on the clock, just 2 seconds. And there we see Nodirbek now picking up the bishop. And look at that. Richard is trying with just 2 seconds on the clock.
With his king there? I think he's kind of given up there, isn't he? Look at the disgust there. And it is checkmate on the board.